My name is Hannah Traina. I'm currently an art teacher at Hudson's Bay High School in Vancouver, Washington. I grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains of southwestern Virginia in the beautiful, very rural country, and was inspired by the 16 Hands artists who surrounded my life and I grew to love dearly. My parents, also artists themselves. My dad's a banjo maker and my mom is a painter. We play music together. And now I have a band in Seattle called the Barn Owls. I also owe a lot of my creative energy and support to my partner in crime, Poost. He is an amazing wood turner and celebrates the natural material of local urban woods. I've always had a passion for teaching. I've taught in various locations, public studios, community centers, now public school. I really appreciate the enthusiasm that kids have when they're creating art. It inspires me to continue exploring when making my own work. I've always really liked carving into leather-hard clay. It's a substantial yet malleable material. In college, I began to experiment with installation pieces, using the space as part of my work. After college, I spent 3 months in Denmark performing a work trade where I got a lot of great experience in wood firing. My process is wheel-thrown porcelain that's altered, then carved and refined. So here's a piece that I start out with wheel-thrown and add a second piece on top, making it rather tall and forming it together. And here I have a time lapse of how I lay out my design and start to push the clay around. From the outside in, I use my thumb to sort of maneuver the flowing lines that I'd like to create, and then I take my hands from the inside and push outward. I like to test the limits of the material, finding out how far I can actually push the clay, and sometimes taking it to the brink of no return. I like to find that line and play with that, and not only play with it at that stage of really moist clay, but to see how that continues to be pushed even further to that limit in the firing itself. My studio space is at the Clay Compound. It's part of Mudshark Clay Studios. It used to be their main manufacturing location. It's in Northeast Portland near 60th and Killingsworth. And it's become a very lively space since I've moved in. I've been there for more than 2 years, 2.5 years now. And it's just been such a remarkable place to grow and develop my skills, and also to be challenged by a community of other artists that are pushing themselves to do well. Some suggestions come from these studio mates that I never would have thought to incorporate into my work. There are some incidents and mistakes that happen with this work. It is very fragile work. I carve away about as much as I can take away without having it collapse entirely on me. And sometimes it does collapse. For the firing process, I carefully bisque fire my work to cone 06. I carefully observe for any cracks or fractures that may have occurred during that time, And at this stage, I can still manipulate and buff out my pieces. For this particular piece that we're following, I was lucky enough to be invited to Stephen Mickey's Soul Gama wood kiln in Battleground, Washington. And it was just a remarkable experience. Here's the load in for all of the pieces. This took about 2 days for us to load everything in and close up the door.
My warfare will soon be ended. My race is nearly run. My warfare will soon be ended, and I am a-going home. You can rebuke me all you want to. I'm traveling home to God. I'm well acquainted with the crosses, and all my ways are hard. They say my Lord is the devil. They call his saints the same. I am not expecting any more down here than grief and toil and shame. God bless those holiness people.
This was my first experience firing with this kiln and with this team. I learned a lot about the physics behind successful results with this kiln, the efficient methods of raising and lowering temperatures.
And when you get to heaven, I want to meet you there. And when they say amen, I want you to say so too. My warfare will soon be.
And through controlled measures of raising and lowering the temperatures, we were able to create these layers of ash that collected on the pieces and then cooled and collected and cooled and brought about these types of crystals and amazing colors and beautiful surfaces on the pottery. Soul Gama fired for about 4 days this time before we shut it down. We had to wait a long 2 weeks before opening Soul Gama, but it was well worth the wait. I had worked that Friday and arrived a little later than they had started opening the kiln and unloading, but I got there with enough time to sit in on the unload myself. Each piece is held and observed and appreciated and celebrated. Sometimes pieces get stuck to the kiln shelves, like mine here. just a little tap with the wooden block and it came free. Now it just needs a little grinding. The next morning after the unload, we gather together again to view and celebrate each other's work. As we pack up our pieces, many trades are made among the group, each person taking a few pieces home as mementos for this occasion. After a long day of work, cleaning the shelves and cleaning the stilts and rewashing the shelves and restocking all of the wood, our team was a really great team. I felt very lucky to work with them. Here's some images of my newest work out of that kiln. My newest work displays the different results that can occur from a wood firing. The Sol Gamma particularly has beautiful, consistently beautiful results. Lots of delightful wood ash combinations with the clay body. I like to make pieces that are going to move in the kiln. I want them to slump and collapse a little bit. Sometimes they slump and collapse to the breaking point. But that's okay. That's the limit I'm trying to reach. I have to cross that boundary in order to find out where it is. This is the piece that we had been following through the beginning of this complex pots presentation. Although the large pieces tend to be the ones that slump and collapse to the breaking point, they tend to be the more incredible pieces if they turn out.
Now if you see me standing on the porch with the 44 in my hand, just tell them all I've killed.
My earlier wood-fired work here in Oregon started at Mount Hood Community College with community firings. Then I was able to put one piece in Sol Gamma last year. The form became organic through the heat of the kiln, causing the clay to slump. My mid-range work also involves carving, more sgraffito. Sometimes I pierce through the pieces with my carvings. I consider these pieces sculptures, but I'll be damned if they don't look good with a candle in them. Thank you for observing my complex process. I feel that my work is a continuous exploration of form, material, and limitations. I look forward to seeing where my process takes me.